Don't miss our 40K straight talk on the new 2017 chapter approved.
Spiky bits.
What's up, hobby maniacs? I'm Rob Baer, and today we're going to talk about the new 40K chapter approved, changing the game of 40K, hopefully for the better. I think overall it's a good thing. There's a lot of negativity out there, and I've said some statements in the past on the podcast that I definitely wanted to clarify myself because I had a lot of time to kind of think about a few things over the Thanksgiving break, and I came up with some interesting ideas. So first off, this is, like I say in the title and description, basically 40K DLC now. And that necessarily isn't a bad thing. I mean, look at it. It literally says 2017 edition. This is Games Workshop's way of creating a living rule set that we will pay for every year. They don't have to come out with a new core set, a new 9th edition, so to speak, or 10th edition. They can just keep putting these bad boys out. This is that whole splash release thing I've been talking about since 2014 when Deathstorm and Stormclaw, I think it was, the Orcs versus Space Marines came out for the very first time, and I started getting wind of the subtle shift in Games Workshop's release cycle that really seemed to be hitting home. Fast forward 3 years later, and it's really kind of coming to prevalence, and we can see that here. So yes, there is sort of a living rule set, and yes, we are going to have to pay for it. But there's some good and there's some bad to it, and I think overall the good definitely outweighs the bad, so to speak. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Now, we are going to take a look at the book, of course, because there's some great stuff in here that we need to talk about, game-wise and stuff too, just conversationally, because this is changing the book. So, living rule set, we're going to have to pay for it. They already said at the Warhammer Open that they're going to be putting out a new FAQ twice a year for Warhammer 40K, one after Adepticon, one after Nova Open. Another great suggestion that I made earlier in the year. I think it's a great idea having seasons, much like Magic the Gathering, where you knew updates were coming out and you knew you were going to have to change, but that gives you enough time to gear up for these big events and get those hobby juices flowing, because Adepticon is the biggest wargaming event out there for tabletop, and it's the pinnacle, and changing stuff all the time and leaving it unpredictable was a little discouraging for a lot of people over the past 6 months. But I think going into 2018, we're stable now, and that's really awesome to see. So a couple of good things there. You got the FAQs coming out. We know there's going to be more predictability. We know that there's going to be a living rules. It literally says right there, 2017. There's going to be one for 2018. There's going to be one for 2019. There's no need for them to put out a new core set, in my opinion, a new core rule, because you can put out new core sets with collector's edition books and things like that, and that's Games Workshop's prerogative. Let's be honest, you got to keep the releases going, got to keep that revenue coming in, and that's a business, and that's just how it works. So the good, in my opinion, is these updates keep the game healthy. Ask a lot of people out there, like, hey, what game do you play? And they're like, or it hasn't been updated, or this thing's broken and it's been broken forever. That is not good for a game. It's good that we're getting these updates and we're keeping the game healthy and we're seeing these FAQs and stuff. Now, yes, it is kind of becoming clunkier, probably than 7th edition, with the amount of books and things that you have to carry around. Like, you got to carry chapter approved now. You got to carry your index, depending on what you're playing. You got to carry a codex. You got to carry your main rule book, or you can have the little fold-out thing, but that's not going to give you the detachment rules, and it's not going to give you the mission rules. Although there are new mission rules here that you could play too, so that's kind of helpful. So that's kind of the bad, is it's clunky. There's definitely a disconnect in the amount of books, I think, that Games Workshop kind of put out there, and all of a sudden 6 months later we're already kind of past the point of no return of 7th edition on the clunkiness. And like I said in the podcast, now we know that Slime Marbo is coming out, and there's going to be rules for him in that box set too, which we haven't seen yet because he actually wasn't in the indexes. He was one of the things we noticed that wasn't in the indexes, so technically he doesn't have rules in 40K right now. But that brings up another point, to go back to the whole splash release thing. That is something that they can put in the 2018 chapter approved. They can put all these releases for data sheets and things into this book like they used to do back in the day for the old chapter approved. Now, there is a section in here that has terrain data sheets for the terrain sets that have come out, even ones just last week for Necromunda, the plasma pipelines and things. Those are in here. So we already are kind of seeing the precedence for that. So that's cool. Even though there might be a little bit more clunk, you'll be able to pick up one book that'll have all that. Another bad thing, unfortunately, is the formatting in here. And I'll explain it a little bit better when we put it on the bench here and we start talking. But this doesn't, these like points changes right here, they don't translate over into the codex and the index, the Imperial armors very well. You know, like in the previous years, and we'll go back 20 years because that's the best example. For second edition 40K, if they put out an update, they literally had a little thing you could cut out, paste into your book, and you were good to go. So that might be a suggestion that we can make is, hey, Games Workshop, if you're going to change, you know, my Adeptus Astartes units, give me the new page of rule. Just give me the new page of rules that I can just cut out of this book and put it into my old book. So I don't have to like either take copies and cut and paste this in, or so I don't have to take my codex, my index, my Imperial armor, and my chapter approved and have 4 books laid out and be trying to like figure out the points and such. So, but there is, and I'll show you down here, there is some room to kind of do some cutting and pasting, but there kind of isn't in a lot of cases. Alternately, I would like to suggest that Games Workshop gets their butts in gear and gets out this army builder program. Now, battle scrap and stuff is great, and I got no preference. I am zero preference for any of this stuff. I can only imagine all of the work that some of these folks do to put these things out and keep them updated, and probably not even really getting paid for a lot of it. And that is awesome, an awesome service for the community. So thank you guys so much that are out there making these programs. But Games Workshop, I feel like this is on you to do this when we have one for Age of Sigmar. Get some staff in there, get on top of it, keep it updated, because it will be a good resource for all of us. You don't have to put all the special rules. Like, we know we gotta buy the books. Got it, I'm buying the books. I just need a way to legally build my list, because we've already seen, unfortunately, the past 6 months worth of competitive events have had huge issues with legal lists. So let's think about that for a minute. If we know that we've had issues when the game was less complex, do you think we will have more or less issues going forward with more and more rules added? And I would wager a guess, an educated guess, and say we're going to have more issues. And that's very, very unfortunate, because TOs don't have time to check 300 lists. It's just not happening. I mean, it's a logistical nightmare that, in my opinion, should be solved by Games Workshop. So hopefully they come out with some sort of army builder, stop harassing these guys that are building these things, because it's kind of a community service at this point. If they are not going to come out with a solution, then let these guys do their thing on these sites and these apps and just leave them alone, because they're providing a service for the community that you are not. And yes, they might make a little bit of money off ads or whatever, but dog, that's a lot of work to keep up with this stuff and keep the formatting fresh and keep, you know, cross-referencing things, bug reports. Like, that is a ton of work. Like, I mean, I feel like that's just my two cents. I think going forward, you know, there's a lot of room for improvement from everybody, you know, whereas keeping track of your lists, and also Games Workshop, you know, maybe giving us the tools we need to succeed on the tabletop. Even if it's like data cards, just slap the data cards down. It might not necessarily have to be points, but it'd be quick reference stuff for the tabletop. I talk about that a lot. I really like my game mates. So good. The game is still fun. I enjoy playing the game. Once I get my army list made, I really enjoy playing the game. It's got a bigger narrative. It's more engrossing. The rules are more engrossing. I mean, just the rules in here, like the cool explanations, like Necrons get Veil of Darkness back. You know, like just dope stuff like that old time veterans or even newer players are aware of, like giving us those cool engrossing rules to keep us entrenched, to keep those hobby juices going. You know, there's even a section in here about building your own objective style markers out of all sorts of different things here. Like, that is cool. That's the cool stuff that keeps us in this game, and it has never been bigger or more awesome or more engrossing than any other time than right now in the 8th edition 40K. I think it's a very good time in general if we can just get the constructing your army list part down to a manageable pre-game, before the game, I think a lot of people would get way more enjoyment out of this game. Okay, so enough ranting from me. I don't even know. I don't have a ticker here to see how long I just ran it for, but hopefully I made some good points and wasn't too negative, because I didn't want to be too negative. I wanted to give you a positive, negative, positive sandwich. All right, so let's go over to the bench and take a closer look at the new book. And here it is in all of its glory right here. Now, you know what? I wanted to make a point. I did make a point. Okay, I grabbed it. So first off, $40 book from Games Workshop. It is soft cover. It's a doozy. It's 128 pages, chock full of content, tons and tons of stuff in here. That some of it is a must-have for the competitive scene. Some of it is a must-have if you really like having fun and playing narrative games. Now, we're not going to go over the narrative stuff quite as much, but there is open play rules in here. That's the Apocalypse. That's those cool Land Raider variants that you've probably seen running around the internet and stuff already. Those are all cool. Those are all in here. There's no points values for these because they are straight up just conversions that are for funsies. So it's just straight power level, right? So we're not really going to get into that. We're going to talk more about the new changes to match play and the stuff that you're probably going to see if you take your models down to your game store. So kind of the things that you might need to be aware of, so to speak. So first off, there is some new missions in here. So if you just want to run these missions and not have to bring down your rule book, and you just want to have, do I even have it close? If you have the little fold out thing, here it is. If you have the little fold out thing from the Dark Imperium book, and then I made a copy of the detachment sheet right here, just in case I forget, oh, what's the one that has all fast attacks? How many elites can I get in there when I'm making my army? I got all my quick reference stuff, but unfortunately, no missions here. But this is a lot lighter than my $60 heavy rulebook when I'm loading up my back, right? Match play updates. So in addition to Psychic Focus, Strategic Discipline, Tactical Reserves, the following special rules now apply. So we have 7 big special rules to playing competitive or match play 40K. And here they are. Understrength support. We've already seen this. So you can't have, you know, like say, what is it, like 30 conscripts. You know, if you have a squad, you only have 15 dudes painted. You want to make an understrength unit. Can only be included in an auxiliary support detachment. So you can only have 3 detachments in your army. That's where they would go. And that's just to keep abuses from happening with things like people trying to min-max things to the extent that 5th edition was a little ridiculous. Targeting characters is a big change, and they alluded to this on their site, and now we have it in black and white. An enemy character with less than 10 wounds can only be targeted if it is both visible to the fire and the closest model to the fire. So that means that you can't park 2 rhinos in between a sniper and do like the 360 no-scope iron sights where that's the only dude I can see, even though there's a whole field of dudes around him. And then conversely, you know, you can't have an independent character behind a wall. You can't see him unless he is the closest model to the guy that's shooting. You can't even indirect fire him with like mortars or something like that. So that's something to be aware of, that change. Limits of command, that's just some reroll stuff. And boots on the ground, we saw that change after ATCs this year where flyers were pretty much everywhere. And then here's the missions. And then it gets into the section about objective markers. Like I said, there's some cool stuff in here, making them all themey and stuff. A lot of these are already pre-made that you can buy. They come in various sets. Some of them are going to be things that you can actually convert and construct yourself out of spare parts and spare weapons. You know, the spare reanimated Necrons from the big transport thing. So lots of cool stuff there. And then we get into the faction rules themselves. And there is 11 factions in here, the big 11 that were updated. They're going to explain all the, you know, how relics work, how warlord traits work, how factions, or excuse me, how detachments work, and how you can unlock, you know, your stratagems. So if your army is Battleforged and includes any faction detachments, excluding auxiliary, you have access to that faction's stratagems, meaning you can spend command points to activate them. Nothing's changed. That is the same in every rulebook. So say you want to be Death Guard, you got to have a Death Guard detachment of all keyword Death Guard, or else that technically doesn't, you don't have a Death Guard keyword detachment, which means that you don't have access to those stratagems. Kind of like that. So you have to be careful what you include in your Death Guard, or even, you know, your Imperial, even Chaos, or even Ultramarines to some extent. You don't want to be mixing in things like Celestine into an Ultramarine army, because now you don't have access to Ultramarine stratagems, even though Ultramarines probably are strong enough on their own to not even need them, or can do their chapter tactics special rules and things like that. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we've got the sisters in here, and you've probably seen a lot of these rules already spoiled. Suffice to say that to have Martyrdom, which is a great 1 command point out of sequence activation, as long as you roll a 2 up, once one of your characters dies, well, then you can pop off one of your acts of faith. You know, you can shoot, you can probably assault, you can move, heal wounds, etc. They got a new blade, it's right there. You've probably seen a lot of this stuff already. Death Watch, not so hot. Dark Eldar seem to be pretty cool. Both Dark Eldar and Harlequin's got this portal mechanic here that allows you to put 1 or 2 infantry beasts, in the case of Dark Eldar, or jet bike units into reserve, and then they just appear at a time of your choosing more than 9 inches away. That seems pretty good. Genestealer cults have a cool warlord trait now that allows them to kind of do what they could before, where they can kind of do the heroic intervention and try to keep their leaders from getting picked off in combat. It doesn't matter if they are a character themselves, they can just kind of intercept and throw their bodies in front and get in the way there. There's also the, what is it? The one where if you have a Primus, you can roll 3 dice on the cult ambush table, kind of like a mechanic we saw with their formation back in the day. Harlequins, like I said, got the Webway Assault. They also have Prismatic Blur, which might be pretty big as well. It allows 1 Harlequin unit from your army after his advance then now has a 3-up invulnerable save until the start of your next turn. That seems pretty solid. Imperial Knights ported over the Rotate Ion Shield from the AdMech book. However, it now applies to both the Questor Mechanicus and the Questor Imperialis. Because remember, even though there are knights in the AdMech book, those are the ones that are indentured or allied to specific forge rules, like you saw like Tenaris and stuff in there. But there's still like House Terran, which are these guys right here, the blue guys, that are not in that book, that, you know, are from the normal knights. And then of course you got all the free blades and stuff, so I imagine we'll be seeing more of those. So while this isn't as cool, the Ravager relic is pretty neat in the fact that it's an additional 2 strength over their actual chainsword there, so that's going to get them up to strength 14, neg 3 AP, D 6 damage. So if you get hit by this thing, and it's reroll 1s to hit for this weapon, if you get this hit by this thing, you're taking an invul, probably most likely at -3, and if you fail it, you're hit. That's a Slayer of Men, that's a punch in the face. And the fact that I think they have 4 base attacks, and if you take 1 as your warlord and give them this, well, now you got 5 base attacks. So you're gonna fail some of those, and what gets through is gonna be the Ender of Men for sure. Necron's got the repair subroutines, which is pretty cool that you can throw it now on any canoptic unit, even ones that don't have reanimation protocols, for 2 command points. It's pricey, but it's good. Now the Veil of Darkness also allows you to port the Baer and 1 friendly unit within 3 inches anywhere on the table, deep striking in more than 9 inches away, which is pretty cool. So there's that mechanic, and then there was another one in here. I forget. Oh, the Space Wolves have the Cunning of the Wolf, which also allows you to put them into reserve. So lots of alternate deployment and asymmetrical movement options for this book here, which is pretty neat to see. Orcs got a really cool stratagem with the mob up, so it allows a squad that's been decimated by a previous morale check or previous shooting or something like that, or just the fact that you have them on the table and you might want to mob up or something like that. For 1 command point, they can become a bigger problem. So there's lots of strategies involved with this one. I feel like in the future we'll be seeing a lot more from that trait there. True Grit is pretty cool, kind of bringing back the Pistol Type 2, the old special rule they had in 5th edition. But also maybe a little bit of a tell here is that it says that they can fire their auto bolt rifles, bolt guns, bolt rifles, or bolt carbines. Auto bolt rifles, I believe, are the weapons of the Primaris Marines. So it looks like Space Wolves might be getting some Primaris action here in the near future when they get their codex dropping at whatever particular time that just might be. Tau really interesting. The engram chip, it lets you get command points back whenever somebody spends one, whether it's you or your opponent. But I think people are going to be a lot more impressed with the uplink marker light. Now, there is no points changes for the Tau Empire, which has left some Tau players lamenting because the Riptide is a little pricey, in my opinion. And then Thousand Suns right here. Not 100% feeling some of these rules. I like the scrolls, Irresistible Force on a double. However, you still might perils, but with the rise of Chronos for Tyranids, the Chronos High Fleet rules, you might not be seeing as many Psychers on the board as we used to in the past. And then the appendix section is going to give you rules for terrain, battle zone, industrial rules, or stratagems for those, but they are optional. Empirical Storms, which is just like fighting with different weather conditions or other effects or events. And then a guide to setting up and running the ladder campaigns, which is really interesting. It's only 2 pages, but it's okay. I haven't read it. Some of the stuff I haven't read yet because I was looking at big changes to competitive play, just to kind of speak on that a little bit. But here they are. Updated points values for December 2017. Now, where I could and where it applied to me, selfishly, I wrote the old points values in the margins here. And this is kind of what I was talking about formatting wise. So you've got stuff like Space Marine units. And let's just flip to the Death Guard section. It's kind of what I wanted to show you is you've got this Death Guard unit section in Death Guard War Gear, which really isn't that big of a deal if I want to make a carbon copy of that and put it in here and just, glue it into this page, because I got all this space that I can just put updates, and that's fine. I don't care. So that way I know, okay, is it over here? Okay, cool. I check over here. Okay, got it. No big deal. But here's where it starts becoming a problem is the points values in the Imperial Armor are not laid out that nice and neat. They're actually kind of just jumbled in here anywhere that you can kind of put them. Now, the Trader Crestors, no, not so much, but when you got stuff like the Earring Cults, the Flyer Dudes, and the Demon Bound and the Health Lords, you're going to be a little bit more hard pressed to kind of put them somewhere in the appropriate sections because it's all just kind of jumbled together. So that was a point I kind of wanted to make, is that the formatting is kind of weird, and they also combine War Gear, whether it's shooting or in assault, all together here, whereas it's separate in your points values in your books. So just a little something to be aware of. Now overall, I think Death Guard went down for the most part. You've probably already seen most of these changes. A lot of the bigger stuff like Apocalypse level kind of type units, things like big Titans, super flyers like the Thunderhawk, even Mastodons and stuff that was kind of mid-level like the Brass Scorpion of Khorne and stuff like that, all went up in price. Some of the mid-level stuff that's a little bit more manageable in smaller 2,000 point games might have received a reduction if it wasn't being played, but for the most part the more competitive ones went up a little bit. Stuff like Basilisk Earthshaker cannons or Basilisk platforms. The Xiphon Interceptor went up 30 points right here. The Fire Raptor actually went down in points by 60 points, which was pretty substantial. I think that's a clear indication of, hey, this isn't seeing enough play in our opinion. We'd like to see more of those on the table and stuff like that. So you really kind of got to drill through a lot of these. Of course, you can probably pause the video and see the marks I made in here with the updates themselves, just so you can kind of get an idea of what has changed. On the guard side, nothing too crazy. The Cyclops went up 20 points. Those things are hilarious when they blow up. I love those things. And they count, you can get 3 for 1 Force Org slot. They can kind of form a squad and then deploy out separately. Then also we noticed that there was, of course, the Malefic Lord went up to 80 from 30. Salamander went up. That was the one that lets you get those rerolls. That thing's pretty cool. It's got a 12-inch move. And some other big winners. The Quad Launcher went down. Didn't really see a lot of play. Wasn't seeing a lot of play. Earthshaker Battery went up 35 points. Earthshaker Carriage went up 30 points. So Battery, 35 points. Earthshaker Carriage, 30 points. Very interesting what the difference between those is in Games Workshop's eyes. The Avenger Strike Fighter went down 25 points. That's actually a pretty cool little gunboat. You can kind of arm it with a lot of different things. So that was the big changes, and then in the back you just got an appendix so you can make your own VDR Land Raider stuff and your army rosters and detachments and things like that, so you can have it all kind of in here. So that's pretty much it. Our 40K straight talk on the new chapter approved, aka 8th edition DLC, or Warhammer 40K The Rules DLC, as I heard Games Workshop does not like it when people refer to it as 8th edition. They're trying to rebrand it as the rules themselves there. So really interesting play by Games Workshop, but I can definitely see where it makes sense in their regard. So that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed our straight talk on this. If you like these sort of features here, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on the button below that looks like a bell. Turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on our posts.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. Thelongwar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.